is. I'm Mayor Chris Jensen coming to you live, thus the great IT infrastructure here from Noblesville, Indiana, America's hometown, for another edition of Mental Health Monday. And boy, do we have a good one for you today. We are in the depths of winter, and we're going to talk about loneliness. And boy, do they go hand in hand, don't they? But we have an extra special guest with us, Mindy Mayes, pastor here in Noblesville at Bethel AME Church, and an all-around amazing human being who I thoroughly enjoy as a person. And if you haven't ever been to her church or heard her preach, you are missing out. You will be on fire after you hear Mindy Mayes preach. But before we get started, I'm joined by my good friend, Kristen Boice, owner of Pathways to Healing Counseling here in Noblesville, a great advocate for mental health support and a great friend, somebody who generously gives of her time, talent, and treasures to make Noblesville better. So good morning, Kristen, and good morning, Reverend Mayes.
Good morning, Jensen.
So glad to have you here today. Before we get started down this journey on loneliness, we're going to talk a little bit about Black History Month too. But before we do that, we always got to breathe. And Kristen was like, if we're running late, maybe we'll cut out the breath. I was like, we will not cut out the breath because it's too important. So take it away, Kristen.
So square breathing to center our nervous system. This is a tool that I teach every single client, and I use myself and my whole family uses. It helps you get from fight, flight, freeze, fawn, or flop into a regulated state. So this is what I tell people to practice every hour, multiple breaths an hour. We're going to start with feeling our feet on the floor. So we're kind of centering ourselves in the present moment. We're going to inhale through our nose, inhale for 4, hold for 4, and slowly release out your mouth for 8, like you're cooling soup, cooling a cookie. So that slows the nervous system down rather than it revving it up. So we're going to do one breath together. So let's feel our feet on the floor. Deep inhale through your nose. Slow exhale out your mouth. And just kind of notice the difference before and after the breath and how different your nervous system feels.
I always feel much better. I always say, especially as we head into road construction season, ladies and gentlemen, the breath is something you can take with you at all times. And I would encourage you to take it with you in your car as you travel the city of Noblesville. I use the breath a lot. I impart that on my kids. We do a lot of breathing at home with little kids. So it is a great tool to have in your back pocket at all times. Sounds so basic, but it is not. So yes, today we're going to transition and talk to our good friend, Pastor Mindy Mayes of Bethel AME Church here in Noblesville. Pastor Mayes, if you want to tell a little bit, take a minute, tell about yourself, tell about your church. Would also love to kind of engage a little bit on Black History Month and kind of what you guys are doing to kind of have this conversation in our community as we continue to be a more diverse community here in Noblesville and the efforts that we're undertaking. So I know you might be a little frozen right now, but I think we can hear you. So. Maybe.
Okay. Hopefully you guys. Okay. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. We got you. We got you.
Hear me? Well, I am excited. Perfect. I am excited to be here with Mayor Chris this morning, and thank you for that square breathing. This is always a little nerve-wracking, but I pastor Bethel AME Church. We are the oldest African-American community in the Noblesville area. On next year, we will be celebrating 165 years in Hamilton County. Most of that time has been in Noblesville. And I know today's conversation is around loneliness, community, and isolation. And I think the church is one of the best places where you can build that community. We may be an African-American church, but we pride ourselves with being the church with the cross on the hill, where we love you and there is nothing you can do about it. So all are welcome to attend our church. You do not have to be African-American. I do get that question sometimes because it's African Methodist Episcopal, but we are a church that is truly open to all, where we hope to build community for those in the Noblesville area. In February is Black History Month, so just a time where we honor
One thing I'll say, Pastor Mayes has been so good to me to kind of be an advisor for so many of us in leadership in Noblesville to kind of help continue to break down, barriers around there. She mentioned she's always the first one to invite you to come and join them at church on Sunday and come and participate in events. And I think sometimes as a community, we need to have brothers and sisters on both sides that are willing to kind of help bridge that divide. And Kristen, you probably see it a lot as we talk about cultural differences in our communities. Hamilton County is still and Noblesville, still a predominantly white community, but becoming more and more diverse, which is something that we are excited about. But I still think it also can make us a little apprehensive. You want to comment on that kind of from a counseling space and maybe how we address that?
I think one of the things we look at is upbringing and cultural, what we've heard, what we know. And I really encourage people to open up their hearts, open up their minds, look at that conditioning that you might have been given, question it, get curious about it. And I like to give permission for people to question everything. So if they were taught something, I'm like, well, let's look at it now. How does that feel in your body? How does that feel in your nervous system? How does that land with you now? And when we are given permission to have curiosity to question things, I think it opens up the heart, the mind, the spirit, and the soul to broaden love and capacity. I really believe that. I think if we work through our past traumas, maybe work through what has happened to us, it expands the heart.
Yeah.
And that's what I really recommend for folks is if there's something, a block, maybe it's associated with trauma that needs to be cleared, maybe through therapy or other personal work.
Yeah. Well, that's what, again, I would just encourage you if you are interested, get to know Pastor Mayes and her team at Bethel. They're always, the door is always open. She's, I have tried to surround myself with people that I can ask uncomfortable questions to. And it's not usually even uncomfortable for the folks I'm asking. It's usually for me. It's my own issue. And find folks that will walk alongside you to help answer questions and better understand. And that's what Pastor Mayes and her team at Bethel have been continuing to do. So thank you, Pastor Mayes. We're going to dive into a topic around loneliness here today. And it is a heck of a time of year to see loneliness. I imagine a lot of folks tuning in today might experience that. I've certainly experienced that before. It's oftentimes this time of year for me when I feel that way. So Kristen, do you want to kind of tee us off around this loneliness conversation? I know from the city side, we have really been focused on policy issues that we can tackle. Just real quick plug for what we're doing. We're looking at new development around housing developments and how do we encourage inclusivity with neighborhoods? How do we encourage front porches, for example, and more trails and green space in the front of the house that draw people out to meet their neighbors? We know when people meet their neighbors, they are connected better. That helps combat loneliness. So we're looking from just a governmental standards perspective, how do we reduce that? But I know you do a lot of work in the mental health space around this too.
It's we're the loneliest we've ever been in history. And many people think it's this technology creates a false sense of connection. And one of the biggest fears I have when I work with people is the fear of being alone forever. They'll say that I'm afraid of being alone forever. And it really can be a deep rooted issue. Maybe they had neglect in childhood. Maybe right now they're going through grief and loss and they've lost a loved one. Maybe they're battling addiction or some trauma in their life. Or they're just going through a seasonal feeling of really feeling isolated and alone, because this weather can isolate us so much and make us feel alone. So it's a deep-rooted issue. It's a universal issue that goes across all cultures, that loneliness can be a feeling that we all have had at one point in our life. And we crave connection to feel seen, known, understood, and loved. That's universal too. And we are going, well, how do I meet people? How do I get out when I feel not good enough? There's a lot of shame associated with loneliness and fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of not being liked or loved. And so it can feel vulnerable to put yourself out there. And I think that's important to recognize that that's part of the journey of healing loneliness, is facing those fears, learning how to deal with that not good enough feeling with self-compassion and grace. And often spiritual connection can help. So tell us a little bit about, Mindy, how you help people heal from loneliness.
And just on cue, we've kind of lost her there. I think we're having a slight internet connection issue with our friends at Bethel, but we know that the faith-based community is a huge component to that loneliness. And our pastors, our faith-based leaders in our community are on the front lines oftentimes of helping to connect people to that. I went to a men's retreat a few weeks ago at White River Christian Church, for example, that connected men around isolationism. But Mindy, now that you're back, you want to talk a little bit about the faith-based community and what you're seeing on that loneliness front?
I think she's frozen
Perfect.
on my end.
Hopefully you guys can hear me.
There we go.
Again.
We can hear you.
Yeah,
we lost you.
Hopefully you guys can hear me again. One of the things.
I think we're having some connectivity issues.
But you're on. Keep going.
I can't hear her.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things that I like to share is spiritually, especially from a spiritual place, loneliness is not weakness. It's not a lack of faith. Honestly, lonely is a human experience that all of us feel. We feel it when we think about isolation, fear, disconnection. We get it in times of grief, when you move, if you're a parent, if you're a caregiver, if you're retired, if you're divorced. All of these things can create loneliness. But the great thing that the church can do, and not just my church, any church or other communities can create that place of connection. I like to think about the church as more than a building. It really should be the place for community. And you find that community in all different types of ways, whether it's in small groups, Bible studies, working with other people to do service projects, sharing a meal, finding a prayer partner. If you're not a prayer, finding that conversation partner. And one of the best things I like about church is you can even get that intergenerational connectionness. So you create grandparent bonds. One of the things
I'm nodding as if we can hear Reverend Mayes here. She's doing a great job. She was talking a lot about intergenerational connection. Take it from there, Mindy. You were talking about an intergenerational connection before you kind of got cut off there.
Oh no! And I was saying all kinds of great stuff.
You were on a roll. You were on a roll. We heard a lot of it, so keep going there.
Okay, and I am so sorry. I have no idea what is going on with our connections.
You want to talk about intergenerational connection, Kristen, Boice?
Yeah, I think or that sense of bond.
Go ahead, Mindy. Take it away.
Oh, and I was just, that sense of grandchild bond, or even some of that parent-child bond. And you can even make the relationships where you learn some things along those. I was sharing, I don't know if that part was heard, that especially with Noblesville being a community where a lot of people are moving in, I myself am one of those where my family is in the East Coast, but I've been able to create a family connection. I have a little one right now. And so the church has been a place where my little one has those aunties and uncles and grandparents that we can reach out to.
What do you say for folks that have maybe some religious trauma that are afraid to go back to church because they felt rejection or been traumatized in some way? Because we deal with a lot of that in our practice.
Absolutely. So I start by saying the church is a broken place. Broken people come to the church. I see it as kind of a hospital for spirituality. I encourage everyone to try to find the perfect church for them. Sometimes you have to keep looking. I would love for everyone to come to Bethel, but Bethel may not be the community that everyone needs. What you have to find is a community where you can find a sense of purpose, where you can find a sense of belonging. And I'll even share that as a
that would happen, right? If she was tearing up to share something perfect.
You know, that a lot. People will say, I go to church, but I feel rejection, or I don't feel like I belong.
Yeah.
Or I don't feel like I have connection. Oh, she's back. Yay.
Oh no, I do not know what is.
That's all right. I think we're just gonna keep working through this, because you know what? The church is a broken place, and so is the internet at times. So You know what I mean? It's fine. We're gonna keep working through this. You were sharing something there.
Yeah, absolutely. That, there is a church for everyone. I would love for everyone to come to Bethel, but I realize we may not be the community for everybody. It is really important to find that place where you feel you belong, where you feel you matter, where you are feel that you are seen and heard, um, where you have that
So
place
often, Kristen, people
of
think that,
extending and receiving.
okay.
So please, if you have church hurt and church trauma, I ask you not to give up on the church. The church you were at may have not been the church for you in that moment, but there is a church out there for you. And even if you come to Bethel and you feel like it is not the place for you, I am willing to try to help you find a place where you can belong and you can connect spiritually.
How do you see loneliness in the church?
I think we see loneliness in the church at all times. As I mentioned earlier, it really is a human experience. And empathy and compassion are really important. I can never say I know what you are feeling, even if I've been through a similar situation. And so we see it in times of grief. We see it sometimes in parenting. We see it in people feeling like I am the only one who's here and I am the only one who is feeling that particular perspective. You can sit in church on a Sunday morning, you can sit through a whole service and still feel like you are at that place of loneliness. But what I love about the church is it is a community, it is a place to gather. So if you can, just try to keep pressing forward. If you feel like you're in that place that you're alone, come for the connection, come for the relationship, come sit and have some coffee or drink a bottle of water or whatever it is that you feel that you need in that moment. Because as the church, it is our job to try to work towards bringing that joy, to help people move through the grief, to help people answer questions of doubt and hope and what that looks like from a spiritual perspective.
And I love that, Mindy's here giving permission for people to feel that way. I think that's so much of what we say. I would say, like, you are entitled to feel the way that you feel. Our goal is here to listen to that and then try to continue to help you walk through that. I imagine that's how you approach things, Mindy, right?
Absolutely. My members have heard the story more than once, but I think it was in my brokenness that truly moved me towards where I am in my call and ministry. It was at one of my lowest points in life. Not one, but two sisters had died. Well, at that time, only one.
So she lost her sisters.
No, I think we went out again. Oh, I grew up going to
Right.
church, and so that's what I knew. I knew to find a church, and the church that I found was an AME church in Bloomington, Indiana. It was fabulous. They helped me walk through all kinds of grief and pain. One of those grief and pains that I walked through, I think this causes some of the church we talk about, is this idea that you cannot question God or you cannot question a higher power. I had to learn that, for me, it's okay to question. Now, I may not like the response that I get, but it's okay to ask some of those questions.
Kristen, can you talk about, I think
And
I was going to pivot real quick because Mindy was bringing a great point about, she took her trauma from losing sisters and leaned into the church. A lot of people don't do that. So, and hopefully they maybe get to you, Kristen, at some point in time. But what kind of trends are you seeing around that loneliness? We know what avenues people can take. But you want to talk a little bit about what those avenues look like? And it may not be a religious institution. It may not even be a mental health professional. That's what's leading folks to addiction issues and even further spiraling down some real hardships that we're seeing in our communities.
Like I said, it's an epidemic. Loneliness is an epidemic, and we're more isolated than ever. And I think a couple of things, because I help clients through this often. One, it takes courage to ask for help. A lot of times you feel so in the dark abyss that you can't even get yourself out. That's where that 988 comes into play. Like if you're at home and you just text 988, I'm desperate, I am lonely. Another thing is there's grief share groups, there's grief support groups. That is extremely helpful. And a lot of people, it takes a lot of energy just to try to find one of those. I love a podcast, books, journaling. I'm a big fan of writing because we want to get it out and process what you're really feeling. That despair, that hopelessness, that feeling that I don't have hope that this is going to get better. And also, I think community is essential. I really do. At least one person, finding one person to talk to and be your most vulnerable, authentic, honest, real self. That is such a gift. If you have one person in your life, whether it's a therapist, a pastor, a friend, anybody that will listen to your truest emotions, that's how we find healing. I really believe it's through connection and relationship. And so when we're isolated, it keeps us stuck. It just, even though it's so hard to make that step, to be vulnerable and reach out to a safe person, it's essential for your healing. Truly, truly, we are meant to be neurobiologically wired for connection and relationship. So if you have one person, that's what it takes. And that one person might be a 988 person, a clinician on the other line that talks to you. That is a connection. That's where we can start. And I just want to say you matter, you're worth it, and you're enough. And I know the shame wants to tell you something different, but just to take one step a day towards connection and reaching out to somebody. We always say, well, they're not reaching out to me. Guess what? I hate saying this to people, but you've got to be the one advocating for yourself. You have to find your voice and share how you feel.
Mindy, I always question, I've asked Kristen this question before in the past, how
I want to jump in. Hopefully I'm
Go ahead. She's going to come back in just a second. I can feel it.
Yeah.
I want to ask her about how she, as a faith leader, finds connection, because there's a lot of people that go to you, Mindy, with their challenges. Can you talk a little bit about what your outlet looks like, if you're willing?
Absolutely. And as Kristen was talking, one of the things that I was going to share is I am a preacher who truly believes in, prayer can do a lot for us. Talking to that higher power can do a lot for us. But I also believe in professionals. I believe that God created these people to help us. We have some professionals who are members of our church, but I believe in seeing a counselor. I believe in seeing a therapist. I believe in letting people know there are professionals who can work through this. As your pastor, I can help you spiritually. I can help you pray. I've had a few classes in psychology, but that is not my expertise. I'm going to pass you on to a Christian who can then help you take steps to continue to work through this. And I will be the first pastor to say, I truly believe in counselors and therapists, and I see them often.
Mm-hmm. I think that's huge. And I was hoping you'd take the bait on my question there and answer that way, even though you and I have not had this conversation. But I think it's so important. I mean, there's a reason why I, as the leader of Noblesville and on this show, having this conversation, I think we have to practice what we preach, and I think I see it all across our community that where pastors openly talk about how, because if you think about it, and Kristen, you talked about, you go to, you have to. I mean, how do you deposit all that information without processing with someone else? I mean, I think it's so important. And I think we've got to realize pastors are human beings too. They're helping it. If we want Mindy Mayes to help us walk through the valley here, we got to make sure Mindy Mayes is equipped and ready to go and healthy herself.
And there's free therapy out there. So if people say, I can't afford it, I say, go to the grad counseling clinics at Indiana Wesleyan, CTS. I mean, there are free therapy resources out there. If you're struggling with pain for it, they're out there. So there are resources available.
And as we wrap up here today, it's amazing how quickly the time goes by. My good friend Lavella was chiming in about how, it's important to reach out to those that may be isolated. We should take some of that on our own. I always say, I'm not afraid to just call anybody and ask how they're doing. I'm somebody who's pretty blunt in that regards. We need to think about those friends and neighbors and that are around us that might be isolated right now. And a quick check-in can honestly save their life.
It really can.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah. Pastor Mayes, as we wrap up, any final thoughts on this topic? First of all, you've been amazing, even to work through these challenges. You've been awesome.
Thank you.
Are an awesome human being. Any final thoughts on this topic?
Absolutely. As we think about the church, as we think about the pastor, we are all people. And people long for connection. If the church is your place to get that connection, I invite you in. But for me, it's important that you find the connection. And as we look across history at churches and at spirituality, that is an important piece. That's that connection, that place where you can have a sense of belonging, knowing that we may not believe in everything, or there are things that in church we might have differences around. Our community isn't going to be perfect, but it's a community for support, for growth, to remind people that they matter, that they don't have to carry life alone. I think is the biggest piece.
Those are actually perfect words to end on right there. You don't have to carry life alone. So thank you. And Kristen, Boice, as always, you've touched on 988. I look forward to continue this conversation. Mindy Mayes, you're a special addition to the city of Noblesville, and we're so lucky to have you now as a resident of Noblesville too, which I'm so proud. She was just a great import every day for years, and now we have her locked in, which I love. So a great conversation. Thank you to both of you again for your time, talents, and treasures today. We'll look forward to seeing everybody back next month for another edition of Mental Health Monday. But in the meantime, feel free to stop on over at Bethel. I guarantee you Mindy Mayes will open the door. And we'll be glad to have you there at any point in time. So thanks again, everybody.